We are an international exchange organization that does youth exchanges all around the world. We're really happy to see so many of our friends from Japan with us today. This is very cool. And so what we do really is all about sharing and exchanging culture, right? Everything about international exchange is about creating mutual understanding through sharing cultures. And it's one of the coolest parts of our jobs. And so as the holiday season is here, we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to share a little bit about the traditional holiday food here in America, which is gingerbread. We're going to do a little twist on a traditional gingerbread recipe today. It is actually a Polish gingerbread recipe, which is very exciting. So a few things just before we get started. This is a big Zoom meeting today. We have over 110 people right now, which is very cool. So everybody is muted right now, and you cannot unmute yourself. However, we do have a chat box. So if you have questions as we are going along, or comments, or if we're going too fast, please let us know in the chat box. Just shoot us a message in that and we'll be able to see it. If you would like to, please rename yourself with your first and last name so we know a little bit who you are. And for bakers who are on the younger end of the age spectrum, I hope that you guys have parents who are helping you with this, as we are using the stove and the oven. So we really, again, want to encourage our young participants to have some parental help and support as we move through our gingerbread baking. So again, welcome everyone. We're really excited to have our global community, again, people from all around the world here with us tonight. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna hand it over to our host, Jan Bryn, to talk a little bit about the recipe that we'll be cooking today.
And I needed to unmute myself. Dzień dobry, hello. I am Jan Bryn, a Michigan State University Extension educator, and I'm honored to be sharing this special holiday tradition with all of you. My family has hosted opening our hearts and home to over 25 international guests, with the majority of them through the States 4-H International. And this will be the first time we virtually opened our home to so many. So I'm very excited. My husband, Chauncey Bryn, is a chef, and he's going to be doing the demonstrating along with the videos that Grishna has created. And I hope that everybody has your ovens preheating and you have all your supplies ready if you're going to be cooking right along with us. I'm not sure if she was here, if she's on. I'd like to introduce my good friend, Renee Applegate. Is she on, Ben?
Jan, I don't think I see her in the participant list, so maybe we can get her to introduce herself maybe towards the end if she can pop on.
Okay, we can do that. And Renee was going to introduce our international sister, Grishna, but unfortunately it's 1 o'clock in the morning there and she got very, very tired. And so she will not be joining us, but she wanted to thank everybody for participating in this.
Quick note, I'm gonna jump in really quickly, Jan. For folks who are wondering about oven preheating temperatures, that's 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees centigrade. Okay, 400 Fahrenheit, 200 centigrade. Take it away, Jan.
Okay, if you, which slide are you on, Ben?
Slide 2, so introducing our recipe.
There we go. This is where I really needed Renee's help, because this is a Polish Christmas recipe, and I'm going to slaughter how to say it properly. It's Polish Gingerbread Cookies. I'm hoping I said that correctly. And maybe later Renee can tell us a little more about the gingerbread cookies. So if you could go to the next slide for me, Ben. So this is a photo of me in Poland making gingerbread cookies in Toruń. And in 2012, I was the Michigan-Poland outbound chaperone, and I was hosted by Gryzna and Kasia. And one of my favorite adventures was making gingerbread cookies at the Museum of Toruń. And the tradition and history was absolutely amazing. And we'll be making these traditional gingerbread cookies virtually together. So this is exciting, and Gryzna and Renee will hopefully tell you a little more about the Museum of Toruń gingerbread and that culture and tradition. So if you could go to the next slide, Ben. So these were the ingredients that were sent to you. And if you need them broke down differently, because these were converted for you. So if you have any questions on these ingredients, please put them in the chat, and we can answer your questions hopefully very easily on that. And just a note that closed caption in English video will be created and available after today's presentation if you want to go back and try and make some more cookies, or if you missed one of the parts. So I realize some of the you participants didn't need these measurements converted, and so hopefully you'll be okay. Next slide, please. So not included on the listing that you may have available around your house that you will maybe see in the video with Gryzna and Chauncey using as a cooking mitt or a pot holder, which for sure you will need because we don't want you to burn yourself. Voice of experience here, I've done that. Some measuring cups, teaspoons and tablespoons, and possibly a little scale. You'll see Gryzna, she uses a little scale. Also to possibly add with your supplies is a whisk and a spatula. You'll notice Chef Chauncey using a whisk and a spatula, and also some parchment paper. Now, if you don't have those supplies, that's okay. Everybody has some different items in their kitchens. And the other thing that you'll notice is Chauncey and Gryzna have gloves on, so maybe you would want to wear gloves. You'll notice she uses a knife, which you can do that, but if you're using younger children helping you, just make sure and keep safety in mind. Okay, next slide. Because we are going to do it. We're gonna all cook together. Is everybody ready? So again, make sure your oven is preheating. And I'm gonna turn it over now to the next slide. Make sure that you have these ingredients ready. We're going to be working on the stove, and we're going to be warming these ingredients. So you should have a half a cup of butter ready, 3/4 cup of honey, 2/3 cups of sugar, a teaspoon of the 5 spices, and a tablespoon of cocoa. So we have a short video of Gryzna, and Chauncey will be taking over.
So now it's time to prepare all the things that should be heated. So I have 250 grams of honey in here. Now I put 125 grams of sugar. I add 100 grams of margarine. I add the spices, which I mixed here, and 1 spoon of cocoa. Now I'm going to heat it.
Hey, Ben, I think we lost your screen share there. I'm just seeing grid view now.
Can everybody see Chauncey's pot?
Yep, Chauncey's getting on.
All right, Chauncey, take it away.
Ben, maybe while Chauncey is starting this, can you go over again the amounts of each of the ingredients? I think that might be helpful for some of our bakers. And as either Ben or Jan, if you could say those again, maybe I can type them in the chat box to help people.
Can one of you unmute Chauncey?
Can you hear me?
Chauncey, I think you almost, there you go. I think you got the unmute button.
Finally?
Yeah, there we go.
Yay. Hi, everyone. So my pot I have on medium heat. Okay, I'm going to start with my liquid. So the butter's going to go in first, and then my honey, and then the sugar. It doesn't have to be in that order, but that's how I'm going to do it. So I have a stick of butter here. That's my half a cup, and I'm just going to unwrap it and throw it in. Now my pan's been on for probably about 10 minutes now. So when I put this butter in, it may sizzle a bit. And if it does, I'm going to take it off the heat, and so I don't smoke out too bad.
So Chauncey, just for everybody again, could you just repeat that? So that was 1 stick of butter, just heated in the pan, right?
That's correct. 1 stick of butter that goes in, and then I'm going to go with the honey next. So instead of it's 3/4 of a cup. So I'm going to eyeball how much about a 3/4 of this would be. Okay. Most of us chefs in the real world, when we cook, that's kind of how we do it, unless we're going to write a recipe down so you have something to follow. But so you can see as I'm pouring, and I'm going to go right about there. I'm going to call that good for 3/4 of a cup.
Beautiful.
And I have a little spatula here to help me get this out because it's sticky.
Just jumping in, a quick note to folks. If you are seeing the grid view, so a bunch of different videos, there's a view option in the top right corner of your screen. You want to click that and select speaker view instead of grid view. So again, top right corner, view option, select speaker view and not grid view, and then you'll see a nice big picture of Chauncey.
Okay, next I'm going to put in my sugar. It's 2/3 cup, and so I have a 1/3 cup measure, and so I'm going to do 2 of those.
Nice. So we have
and my sugar.
1/2
and I'm going to use my
cup butter.
whisk. Yep. So we have butter, honey, and sugar.
Awesome.
And again, it's about medium heat. So now that some of the stuff is in the pot, you see it's not smoking and it's kind of settled down on the heat. And so I'm going to put it back to medium a little bit. Okay, now the rest of our ingredients, everything is a teaspoon. So I use a regular spoon that I have in my kitchen. One thing, again, as long as the measure is the same, so I'm going to use this as my teaspoon for everything, it's about going to be correct. So when I put it in, I've also gone, when I cook, I always go by flavor and taste and stuff like that. So I know cloves are a really very strong, pungent flavor. I'm going to do this one first, and this would be my, if I'm going to do anything not quite a full teaspoon, it would be this one because I know how strong it is. Now, if you like clove, then nope, go ahead. Feel free to make that a good size teaspoon. Next I have is allspice, which a lot of these things, when you get them together, they all kind of smell the same. Cardamom would be my next one. Again, it's almost another combination of an allspice.
Now, Chauncey, somebody in the chat earlier asked if it was okay if they didn't have cardamom. Is that okay?
Yeah. If you didn't have cardamom, you could add a little more allspice because it's kind of the same thing. Cardamom is a little bit lighter flavor. Next is going to be my ginger. Now, I do a lot of Asian cooking, so we're kind of used to ginger, so I'm going to make this kind of strong, and plus they're ginger cookies, so we like that flavor. Last one is cinnamon. Okay.
Asked about molasses.
Yeah, and so we had one person ask, they didn't have enough honey, if they could add molasses to this. And yes, you can. Molasses would work. If they had a Carol syrup, that would work. Even maple syrup would work. If you use molasses, so molasses, because it has the brown sugar in it, will in the oven can burn a little bit quicker. So they just have to be careful with that if they use molasses to help with the honey. So as you can see, I'm stirring it in already. It looks kind of brown. So now I'm going to do my chocolate. Now, on the video with Regina, she used not a tablespoon, but a really big spoon. Okay, let me get a tablespoon. So here's my teaspoon I've been using. Here's a tablespoon. So you see the difference there? What she used for honey is this thing. That's way bigger. And she used a heaping teaspoon or tablespoon of this stuff. I kind of, roughly, that's about a half a cup that would go in there. So when I'm doing the chocolate, that's the same thing. You can see that. That's a huge amount, okay? And that's going in.
Chauncey, I just got a question in the chat from Laura. What kind of cocoa powder, natural or Dutch processed?
Oh man, that's kind of above my grade. When I know what we're doing is 100% cocoa, which is pure, is not processed at all. So if they used a milk chocolate, and that's why I don't know about the Dutch process, that if it's a milk chocolate, but if it is, all that does is dilute the flavor of the chocolate a little bit. So you may have to add more to get more of a chocolate flavor. But we're using 100% cocoa, so it's pure, not adulterated.
Got it.
Okay, so again, on medium heat, all we try to do is just incorporate these spices together. We don't really have to. At first, I thought that we were going to make a roux, but no, I mean, it's kind of like a roux, but really, we're not even going to cook it that long. We're not going to let it, a roux starts taking on flavor the longer it cooks. In this particular case, we're not really going to worry about that. We're really just going to incorporate the flavors, and the heat's going to help do that for us. And so as you whisk around, I'm just really looking to see if I have any particles that are still not blended through. That's all I'm really looking for. If I see bubbles coming because it's too hot, then I'm going to turn the heat down. Now, some of the bubbles I'm seeing now are because I'm whisking, but that's what I'm looking for. And as you do it, they always say all good chefs, you should do that. Now I have tasting spoons. Since you're cooking for yourself, you probably can use a spoon yourself, but be careful that it's going to be hot. I'm going to taste a little bit to see if I like the flavors that I incorporate into that. Okay, for me, that's good. And this is where, if you like, let's say it's too much clove, you might be able to add a few more things. Cinnamon and chocolate would be good to help counter that. If you don't have enough clove in it or enough allspice, or if you don't have cardamom, and then so maybe you could add a little more cinnamon to get the flavor that you want. This would be the time to do that. And if you notice on the spoon that I use, it's kind of how it's stuck to it a little bit. So this thing is almost ready to go. I'm going to take it off the heat and starting that to cool. And so as it's cooling, we're going to get our flour ready so that we can take our chocolate mix and add it to the flour. So as I do that, I'm going to clean up my workstation here a bit. As they can. Jan just said that if we got a couple minutes here, this stuff should cool for at least 5 to 6 minutes, maybe even 8 minutes to make our flour with the few ingredients we have there. It takes like maybe 30 seconds. So we do have time here while this is cooling if you want to watch another video.
So while it's cooling, maybe they can watch the video version on with the step 2 with putting the flour, egg, baking soda, and salt in the bowl while their mixture is cooling.
So now it is almost cooled. When you keep it for the night, it will be not so much soft like this, but don't worry, it's okay. So we need half a kilo of flour. I washed the table because it is granite and it is great for working. So first of all, let's see. No, it's not like, oh, exactly. I will put my gloves on. This should be removed. Now we add an egg.
Everyone, quick note here. So Grezna is doing this on her countertop, but if you only have a big mixing bowl, that's perfectly fine too. So you can do it on your countertop, but it's okay to do this in a bowl as well.
I'm going to work with a knife first because it is easier. It is not so sticky. Now, just a pinch of salt and 2 spoons of baking powder. Of course, it must be a teaspoon. And now we remove this. You don't have to remove everything. You can leave something and eat it. It's very tasty. In my family, they say, "Oh, it's my turn now." I was the first who told that wants to eat it, what was left. So those leftovers are very desired. Okay. So I will eat it. It's so good. Now you mix it with flour. This is the best part. So you need to cut it for some time. The best lollipop ever. Just a little bit more. You can work on a wooden board as well, or you can put it on paper. At home I use a wooden board, but here in this house I don't have it because this is the perfect one, the granite, I think. It's easily washed. I need to put away my lollipop. Now it's time for work with hands. Look how it looks. You can see it's very nice. Children would love it. Some, of course. Many children like to touch things. So my daughters like it, especially the one which is, both are creative, but one of them prefers to touch things. So it was always a problem because she put her hand in a bag of flour. She wanted to feel it, and they will use it hands with pleasure. It takes some time to do it. Maybe I will pause the video because it will be too long.
All right, so Grizna has showed us about incorporating our cooled mixture into our flour mixture, and we're going to hand it back over to Chef Chauncey so he can demonstrate that step again. And Chauncey, you're going to have to unmute yourself again.
How's that? Yes.
That's great, Chauncey.
Okay. So we have 4 cups of flour we're going to put in. Now, one thing, when we were doing this yesterday for our trial practice, I found that the measurement recalculation is a little bit, so the 4 cups of this makes it a little bit drier than what Regina's is going to be, which kind of worked in our favor because it wasn't sticky and we didn't have to let it cool after that. So anyways, about 4 cups of our flour. Once we get that flour in, baking powder. And my thought was, okay, sure we want to use baking powder? And finds out that the baking powder, because the chocolate we just made, sauce we made, is kind of like almost like a molasses. And anyways, with the heat, it thins out. So the baking powder is the acting agent that's going to keep it from spreading out too much. So that was new for me. I learned something. So about a tablespoon. On the salt, she said a pinch. Kind of hard to see in my glove, but my pinch is about like that, and I put it in. So I have another whisk, and that's how I'm gonna shift this stuff. I kind of shake and stir as I do that, and that's gonna incorporate those few ingredients in, get them mixed in. Teaspoon. Sure, but that's what I thought it said. Yeah, she said 2, but it's a teaspoon. Okay, so that's our dry mix. Now for the egg, one thing, if you're gonna make a biscuit, once you put the cold butter in, then you my one light's going down. So can you still see okay? So anyways, when you cut the butter in, that helps keep it airy and so forth. So we're going to do the egg almost the same way. I'm not going to use a fork to do it. I'm going to use my hands. But what we're going to try to do is just crumble it so that when we're done mixing it, it looks like there's little crumbs in there. Now she used a knife. I'm going to break the egg down a little bit, and then I'm just going to start squeezing and rolling it so that it gets mixed in. And this will take couple minutes. As you can, hopefully you can kind of see how it's starting to clump up a little bit. We want to get that all the way through as much as we can. Yeah. Yeah.
Chauncey, can I ask a question from the chat as you're doing that?
Sure.
So a couple of bakers have expressed a little concern that their initial mixture that you made on the stove was like a little thin, but is that maybe because it hasn't cooled enough yet?
It should be, hopefully. I put mine in my refrigerator, and so I'm about to take it out. We can compare it that point to see if it is kind of thin, then because especially if the Japanese, if it's from them, because they're going to use the grams, which is the same proper ingredient measure that Grezina used, and it will be a little bit stickier. Okay, the American conversion, because of the flour, made it so that it wasn't so much. So there's a way for us to rectify that if it's too wet. And so probably, yeah. Jan was asking maybe just add a little bit more flour, and that's usually the easiest way to do it. Okay, so mine looks pretty good. I'm happy with how I have everything, the egg all broken down and it's a little clumpy. So I'm gonna go get my, this is where gloves comes in handy. If in my business, if I was going to go on another job, instead of having to worry about contamination, I can take my gloves off and put some new fresh ones on, and I'm back in business. Okay, now I just pulled this out of the refrigerator and it wasn't in there very long. Whoops.
Put a pinch of salt in there.
Yes, I already did. So can everyone see that how it's running, but not, when I'm stirring it, it's pretty thick. It feels thick. So if yours is thinner than that, as we mix it with the flour, we'll see what happens to it, okay? So then all that goes in. And if you have gloves at this next level, this is where it would help because this will get kind of messy.
Now, Chauncey, I'm seeing a question as well as like, is it okay to use like a mixer or beaters, or is it really better to do it by hand?
On my mixer, I have what we can do, a paddle, and that will incorporate it a little bit, or maybe even a dough hook, because it'll start getting pretty thick. And so a regular beater wouldn't work, you know, so
okay,
it's kind of like bread dough. If you have that, you could probably do that and get away with it, as long as this bed hook would work better probably as opposed to a beater. So like when I do cookies, I use a beater or the paddle one, and but this stuff is thicker. Once it starts mixing in a lot, it's a lot thicker. Okay, so I'm done with that. All I'm going to do is start rolling it, and as you do it, now you can see with myself, because I'm trying to get more of the flour to touch it first than my fingers. It's not too bad. It's not too sticky for me. But then to get it all in, you really got to start pushing. And this is where if you had a machine do it for you, it might be a little bit quicker for you. Okay, now you can see I'm actually really starting to squeeze pretty hard on this. And again, when I did this the first time, as I was squeezing, I could tell it was a little bit dry. It wasn't getting sticky like the way Grezina talked about. And so I have a little bit of water here, cold water. And as I squeeze the stuff closer more, I'm going to add a little cold water to it because I know it's going to be too dry. And I'm talking about probably a teaspoon at a time so you don't get it too wet. Okay, so when you look at it, see how it's still kind of crumbling? That's because our measurements are a little bit off. And so, but we can rectify that by a little bit of water. And the end product comes out just as good. So the person out there who had it too sticky, or let's say runny, when they do theirs may hold, and then they're going to be good. They're already at that process. They won't have to add any more water.
So they're a step ahead of the game, but if it's a little dry, then you just add a little bit of water to it.
Correct. And the key thing is just trying to get it all incorporated so that you don't have any big chunks of white anywhere.
the video version of the sticky dough. 2 minutes. Why are you reading that?
It's up to them. If anyone's having any problem, Jane's asking if you want to cut to another video while we're doing this. After I get another, once I start getting it so that it sticks together and forms, then really we're at that point where we can start rolling it out. She actually had it, and again, if it's super sticky, she cooled it, and that helps set the flour a little bit, absorb some of that moisture, and then have the mixture cool down even more, so that way it's not sticky. Already, since I'm a little bit dry, we don't have to worry about that. We save a step. Okay, so I'm going to keep adding a little bit more water. I started with about a 1/4 cup, and I'm almost going to be using the whole 1/4 cup, it looks like, on this batch.
All right, we'll head over to the next video and come back to Chef Chauncey after we watch Gruzna knead her dough.
Okay, so it is a little bit sticky because I didn't wait too long for the mass to cool, but you will have the same situation. So you will see, because you won't have time. Yes, so you won't wait long enough. So, but it looks good. When you cut it, now it's it should be the same everywhere, but still it is not. So probably slightly from the knife, but I will work a little bit on it. When you put it to the fridge, it will be good, hard enough to work and roll. When it is colder, the mass that you add, it will be harder to knead, but it doesn't matter. It cannot be hot, but it's just more sticky, as you see. Okay, so now I will cut the paper and put this to the fridge. I make a kind of loaf, but maybe it's better for you to make it like this, because it will cool faster. You don't have to cover it. And I put it to the fridge.
All right, just a quick note there. So because of time, of course, we are not going to be able to chill our dough. We're going to go straight to baking. So when you saw Gruzna wrap her dough in parchment paper there, that's a step you guys won't be doing. So just a note on that. Handing it back over to Chef Chauncey.
Hi, and I'm going to get some different gloves on, but if you can see what I have in here, and hopefully if yours is sticky, it's going to be kind of rough. The cooling process does help. For the rest of us, it's kind of like a log. So it's holding up. And so when I put it on the table here, I'm going to squeeze it out and make it almost like a Tootsie Roll for the American people. I'm not sure if the foreigners will know what a Tootsie Roll is, but it's going to be maybe about 1 inch in diameter, like a big log. Almost looks like a snake, almost. So why I'm doing that is because as I get it out to where the size I want, when I slice it, then I can make uniform cuts and so forth. And so when we did this yesterday, we had about 12 cuts, and then from the scraps, we kept adding back and making another roll and so forth. So we had, man, I want to say close to 20, 24 cookies by the time we were done. And so, and then this is what we made yesterday, and we put it in the refrigerator, and I've had it out now for 3 hours to get it soft. When it first came out of the refrigerator, it was really, really hard. So when you look at that, see, now when I push on it, I can move it. When it first came out, no, not so good. So again, I'm gonna keep working on this. One thing, you don't want these cookies too thin because they were burned if they're too thin. And the ones we did yesterday, even as they cool and get hard, they're still very edible. This is a very good recipe. So now I think I'm ready. I'm gonna cut my pieces. So you can use a less sharp knife. And so all I'm doing is basically trying to make a uniform cut. Okay. And so when we cut our pieces, we're going to have leftovers. Just put them together, make another piece, and cut them again, and just keep doing that till you're all done. So all of this leftover from yesterday is from our pieces. Now I'm going to use some parchment paper to roll with. And I actually have, the rolling pin I have is a marble, so it's very heavy. And so if you have a light pastry one, it might be a little bit easier to control how thick it gets. This one, if you push too hard, they get pretty thin pretty fast. So can you see that? I'm going to use my hand to get it somewhat started. Now, if you want to make one big long cookie sheet and then make your pieces out of that, obviously that's fine too. Okay, so that's kind of about what I'm looking for myself. And I have my cookie shapes, cutter shapes all set up. So I'm going to try to do 12 of these. So does anyone have any problems? You guys have anyone texting in that they have any kind of problem rolling out or too sticky at this point?
I'm not seeing anything yet, Sean. So you're doing a great job explaining it all.
Okay, to me, this one's too thin. I'm going to do it again because I know that'll not be good.
What do you estimate the thickness as, Chauncey? Like if you had to guess?
This under 1/4 of an inch, maybe.
Okay.
Chauncey, what's your advice if the dough is a little sticky and hard to roll? Are we thinking more flour?
That's what I would put on there. Is on the outside, just dust it with it. Put on the bottom and then on the top, so that way as you roll, you can actually roll it back and forth, and that way it won't really incorporate into the center either.
How about for the opposite problem where the dough is a little dry? Are we adding more water?
More water, yep. So that, yeah, hopefully you got that. So yeah, water would be the next thing. And yesterday, I had to use water too, and so today, same thing. I probably used a good quarter cup of water today, though. I don't remember using that much yesterday, but I am today. So once I cut my pieces out, I'm gonna save all our end pieces and put them with the stuff I had from yesterday, and then we're gonna freeze it. And then closer to Christmas, we're gonna bring it out and do them again, and then use those for gift baskets. So if someone's thinking what to do with their cookies, that's one thing they could do with it. And that's what we're gonna do. And I say we, my wife and I, Jan.
Chauncey, quick question. We have some folks who are prepping their baking sheets, and should they add nonstick spray or parchment paper?
Parchment paper would be better. Dry would be better. If you have a dark pan, hopefully 2 sheets would be better than 1 sheet. If you have a clear pan, or not clear, but a silver pan, 1 sheet might work. When we did ours yesterday, and I can show that one real quick. Okay, see, this is dark, and so I have 2 sheets, 1, 2, 3, 4 on this, and that's what I'm going to bake on. And so,
what would you recommend to our bakers who don't have parchment paper handy?
if you don't have parchment paper, then don't use wax paper, because it will melt into the cookie. So that does not work. The best thing to do would be is they're gonna have to watch it. So instead of going a full 10 minutes, they might have to go 7 minutes and see what happens with that. Because typically what happens is from all the sugars we have in here that caramelize, they're gonna sink to the bottom, and then they're gonna scorch. And that's what the parchment paper helps reduce. So if they don't have something like that, they can still cook a cookie, but it'd be not as long a time. If you're going to use 400 degrees Fahrenheit, then don't go as long.
Somebody was asking on nonstick spray.
I would not recommend nonstick spray, because like when I do, I sell quite a few cookies, and when I do chocolate chip or my chocolates and stuff like that, if I use any kind of spray on the bottom, all that does is make the caramelization worse. That doesn't help it. They don't come off the pan any easier. It kind of makes it worse. So I don't recommend the spray. So the way I'm doing this, there's going to be a lot of leftover here. And that's why you just reform it into another ball and start over. I'm going for 12 cookies to press out and cut. And like I said, the remainder I'm going to save. They can roll out as many as they can. So, and actually that's the key thing. Jan was just asking, can they get rid of all their dough tonight? Sure. If we put ours in, the key thing is just 10 minutes, but in all baking, you have to watch, okay? After about 8 minutes, I would take a look. If you don't have any parchment paper, I would definitely take a look after 7 minutes to see what they're looking like on the bottom. And then, and then they can get them all done today.
Chauncey, we have another good question in the chat box about, is it okay to use a silicone baking mat, or is that not recommended?
That would be okay. I have one of those. I use it for my caramel mold, and caramel, same thing. Sticks really bad. Those things work really good.
Great.
Stone?
Stone pans.
Someone's asking about a stone pan. I don't know on a stone pan. Kind of like if I was doing pizza. Boy, that would be different. I don't know. I don't want to guess on that, because, man, I've I've done pizzas on a stone, and typically what happens, again, because of the heat on that thing, is pretty hot. They won't stick to it, but they may scorch a lot more. So they might be really gorgeous on the top, but the bottom's going to be really overdone. That one's kind of thin. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I'm going to do 2 more. Save that one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
All right, and while Chef Chauncey is doing that, we'll head over, watch Grezna roll out her dough and cut her dough. Then we'll come back
Okay.
and see.
Good morning. Now there is the next part. I had a lot of time, so I left my dough in the fridge for the night. So now I have everything, I hope. The only cutters that I have, so maybe I will use a knife to make some more, but this I can use. I need some flour in case the dough sticks to the rolling pin. Paper. You can also roll between 2 papers, but we will see. I forgot the knife. The other knife. Sorry, the other knife. Okay, so we take a portion, and you can see how it looks. I can leave it here, and you'll see how it behaves. Looks well. Oh. Now I think I will need some flour. Oh my God, I need to work on it. It's very, I don't know why it is like this. Use some paper. It shouldn't be very thin, but not very thick either. It depends how big is this part. And now you can find the places that are best. I mean, you can use the scraps of the dough again and put it here. In the meantime, you preheat the oven to 200 degrees centigrade, so you have to change to your Fahrenheit degrees. Okay. So I will have stars and reindeers. One more. Won't be many of them. And do the same with the rest of the dough. Remember, when you put to the oven, these small places like this, they may burn, so you have to look at it. Just if they are the same, bigger parts, it is no problem. But with these smaller, sometimes the legs will be burned a little bit. So let me finish with this. This. Why, I will use it again.
All right, so what Grozny was doing there was what Chef Chauncey has done. You can see on his video, he's rolled sheets.
Okay, so that, if we're ready, I just got my last one to do, and we can pop them in the oven. Mine are kind of thin, and so I'm happy with that. But because they're a little bit thinner than I did cut out yesterday, I'm going to watch them more. So if I have to go 8 minutes as opposed to 10 minutes, that's what's going to happen. This is the part where cooking gets important too. Just don't do 10 minutes and walk away, because 10 minutes may be too long. Okay, so I'm going to put mine in the oven. We have 10 minutes from now. And so the other part would be, again, this is what I have left over. I have quite a bit, but I'm going to store all that, freeze it, and then in 2 weeks, we're going to bring it all out and make some more cookies. But I won't have to worry about making dough. I'll have the dough already set. Okay, so while that's in the oven, it's really pretty quick to make the frosting. If you don't have any frosting, if you can go out and buy store-bought and stuff like that. But the recipe that Reggie and I came up with is very simple and only takes about 5 minutes to do. It takes probably longer to separate the eggs than it does to actually make the frosting, and it does taste pretty good. Okay, yep. So as Jan was mentioned, there is another video that we can watch while the cookies are baking. And then again, everyone, just after about 8 or so minutes, make sure you just check on your cookies to see how your oven is doing.
And before we start the video, Ben, or perhaps I can there's a couple more questions, Chauncey.
Sure.
If you mind answering them. So
yeah.
Michaela asks, do you have to put it in the fridge for the hour or overnight? Is that just for ease of rolling it out? So how did we kind of sidestep the step of putting it in the fridge?
That's what I think. I think it's if you have a sticky, because when I use batters like that, like let's say if I'm doing pasta, we always put it in let it rest for a little bit, and I think that's what that process is. And the way we did it with the conversion, our dough is a little bit dry, so it's not sticky, so you don't really have to let it rest as long. But if you notice, I don't know if you guys can see the really difference, but this is a lot more chocolatey looking than this. This is the fresh one. This is what was sat overnight. So by letting it sit overnight, it absorbs all the moisture and it gets all the way through. So this will become this by letting it rest longer. So if, let's say, one thing which is nice, if you really are pressed for time, you could make the dough a day in advance or even a couple of days in advance, wrap it real tight so it's air sealed, put it in the refrigerator. So the day you have to make cookies, all you have to do. And again, I brought mine out 3 hours early, so I got warmed up at room temperature. So then you could press it out and put cookies in. You're not taking up as much time to make them. So I think that's why. Now I wish Regina was here to see if they do it, if it's really sticky most of the time, and that's why they do it. So far, I've done this recipe twice, and my dough has not been sticky.
we're skipping the chilling step. Everyone should have cookies in the oven, 8 to 10 minutes. If you're using those sheets without parchment paper, make sure to keep a close eye on those cookies so they don't burn on the bottom. And while the cookies are baking, we're gonna watch another quick video that Krishna put together.
Ready in this kind of oven. Okay, so see, they look great. I will close because it loses temperature. And now I can move them to the cooling rack. How will I do this? It is not the real cooling rack, but I use this, which I have something for the grill. Oh, it's hot. Be careful. They are baked now. Don't worry if they stick together. As I said, the legs got burned a little bit, but it is not a problem. These you can split, and if it's like this, crackled, it doesn't matter. You will cover it with the icing. And now, which one doesn't look nice? I think this one, and I can eat it. Mmm, delicious. They are baked.
So again, while we have a little bit of time, while cookies are in the oven, we're gonna watch what Krishna does with her traditional Polish frosting process.
So what about next step after baking? We will make the icing, or you can use the ready icing if you have one, if you don't like anything specific. But I make my own icing. You can also put some food colors to the icing, or I use just the plain one and decorate with different kinds of sweet meat. So raisins, hazelnuts, pecans, dried plums. Of course, you can see some almonds, cranberries, other nuts. Okay, but for the texture, it's very good to use some poppy seeds, because you can sprinkle all over the cake and it is very beautiful. Or you can also use coconut crisps. So feel free. Your creativity is what is important. It may be the last video, so I will take this one. So I will cover almost everything. I will leave a bit for the face.
Okay, so you could see a little bit about how Krishna decorated her cookies, and she used her own homemade icing. But for the sake of time, we recommended that everybody just decorate with whatever they have on hand, whether that's store-bought frostings or icing, or if you made your own, that's great. You can see Chef Chauncey showing a little bit of his decorations as well. So hopefully those cookies will be coming out of the oven fairly soon. We're going to cool them, and then we're going to spend a little bit of time decorating together. So I'll hand it back over to Chef Chauncey. He can talk a little bit about the decorating process he did. Sorry, Chauncey, you're gonna have to unmute again.
There we go. Okay. Jan actually did this, and Jan kind of did this in the tradition of what Regina talked about in terms of using the dates and dried fruit and stuff like that, and nuts. And so on this particular one, same thing. And so today, though, like if I was going to do something like this, I may use some of the nuts and stuff like that, but with a lot of nut allergies, we don't do a lot of that anymore. And so I would use color. And so this frosting, since it's so pure white, it really can blend in different colors very easily. And so if you had food coloring, you would just take some of this. And what I would do, I have a little cabinet here. And so I would use little, like this, put a little bit in and then mix and get my color set up from there. And then I could use that. If I knew I was going to use that a lot, I would use just a regular Ziploc, a small sandwich one, cut a very small hole at the very end. So let me kind of show you what I'm talking about on that. So what I would do, I get a coffee cup like that. So here's my bag. Open it up, stick that in like that. Get a little bit of the air out. And so then you can put in as much as you want, okay? And then once I get it full, all you do is just zip that off, and then you just cut a little bit right here, and then you hold it and you can squeeze and make your decorations. And so you don't really have to go out and buy a big fancy pastry bag for that. You can, but you don't have to. And so, oh, I'm going to check my cookies. And so mine look like they're done, so I'm going to bring them out. Oops. And so my one gingerbread man, since he was up against the side, it looks like he's walking away already. So they're a little bit pliable when they first come out, but as they cool, they'll get hard. And if you notice, like on the star, can you see that on the star? How the edges will get a little bit beat up, so to speak. And so actually, I'm happy with what they look on this side. If you flip it over, can you see that? How the top looks great. The bottom, that's not burnt, but it's a little bit more dark. And that's what happens if you don't have, that's why you really got to be careful and watch if you don't have parchment paper, because that'll go from that to being dark and burnt. Okay, so my frosting is has set up quite a bit. So, but these cookies are so warm that if you put them on now, it'll get kind of runny and drippy. So we need to wait a little bit. So do you guys have any texting of the people that are starting to bring their cookies out and they're successful?
Chauncey, do you have any shortcuts for cooling cookies?
The best way is, like, if I was really, I can do that. I put these in the freezer. That helps cool them down really quick. And so do we need to do that? Because I can do that. And that'll only take a couple minutes. And so let's see, that'll work. So you get them off the hot pan. Oops, this guy's going to try to run. Okay. So Jan, can you help me? Because I need someone to open that door.
I saw one question there about making the icing, and unfortunately, because of time, we left out that part of the class. So if you have store-bought or other kinds of icing, feel free to use that. Otherwise, Jan did post the recipe for it in the chat box. So if you want to take a stab at it, please feel free. And we are a little bit over time. So of course, folks, if you need to leave, that's more than okay. But if you want to stick around with us and decorate together, share some of what you guys are creating at home, feel free to please hold your cookies up to the camera so everyone can see. Please feel free to also just stay with us as we decorate for about another 10 or 15 minutes or so.
So some of the things that I have here, if I'm unmuted, this is dried cranberry. I took the liberty to caramelize some pecan pieces. So they're pecans, but they have a little bit of caramelized sugar with it. This is some crystal glaze on it, and then our sprinkles. Okay. So I'm gonna go check the cookies and see if that a little bit of help cool it down enough.
I see a couple of questions as well about the recording and whether or not we'll be distributing that. Yes, most definitely we will. And as Max said, it'll be on our Facebook page early next week. And then also, Jan is creating a closed caption video of Grezhna's entire recipe video, and we'll make that available as well. So lots of chances, if you didn't participate today, to participate closer to the holidays themselves.
Someone's asking if they can use a Ziploc bag for a piping.
Yes, definitely. That's the easiest way. Okay, so I'm gonna try to see if I can duplicate what Jan did. Okay. I probably can bake better than Jan, but she's definitely better at decorating than me. And I'm going to use the same spoon, but you can use smaller spoons so you can get a little more detailed. I'll show you what I'm doing there. Okay. On mine, I'm going to go for the Jimmy Durante nose, which for all the old people, they may know, but all the kids, nope.
Chauncey, a couple good questions in here. So one, with the icing recipe that you use, does that dry and harden so it doesn't stay sticky?
I don't know. This is Grezhna's. Oh, no, that's true. This is the cookie that. When did we do? When did you do this one? About 3 p.m., 4 p.m.
Yeah.
So this cookie's been drying for about 4 hours, and so it's not hard. So the same frosting is on the same one. So as it air dries, it does get dry. It still feels soft, though, like I could squeeze it.
And texture-wise, for cookies coming out of the oven, what do you think that should be? Should it be crunchier, chewier, somewhere
In the
between?
beginning, I'll just go ahead and break this one. When they first come out, okay, you couldn't really hear it snap, but you can see I had to use a little bit of force to break it. After about another 20 minutes or so, you'll hear a snap when you break them. And so I almost can feel like I could push on it still. But when I first came out, I really felt like I could push on them, even just a little bit in my freezer for only a couple of minutes. They're starting to harden up. And so I know the cookies we did yesterday, I ate one today, and it was harder yet, but still a good cookie. So when they come out, they will harden as they cool. And so if they went in 6 or 7 minutes, they're probably going to be in good shape, especially the ones who didn't have parchment paper. They just may have to let those cool a bit longer.
All right, so we're going to switch over to a grid view so we can see a few more folks decorating. Guys, feel free as you're decorating to show us what you're doing. We'd love to see what you all are creating. So I'm going to remove the spotlight from Chauncey and switch over to a grid view. And again, please feel free to share what you're doing. It's pretty cool that we're baking with people from all around the world. Isabella's got a baking sheet full of done cookies and even some taste testing going on.
That's good.
Looks like Claire's doing some decorating. Claire's using a Ziploc bag, it looks like, to do some of her piping. Very cool. Good job,
Yep.
Claire. Got Clay showing off a couple of his creations. Very cool, Clay. Love those. And Letty also. Can you hold those back up? Yeah, great. Those look perfect. Gracie as well. She looks like she made some trees. Great job, Gracie. And Julie is also in the middle of piping. Those are great. Very cute. All right, check back in with Chef Chauncey.
Okay, so I have so Jan's still looks better, I think. So, and I have my, what do we call them? Not popsicle, but candy cane. My star. I'm going to do one more.
Anybody else want to hold up their creations for all of us to see? Awesome. Really good job, everyone. Oh. Looks like Shinsuke also is pulling hers out of the oven. Those look great, guys. Nice job. All right, so wanted to give Jan a chance to jump back in, and Jan, say any final words or share any final pieces of information about the recipe we cooked today. So I'm going to hand it back over to Jan.
There, now I'm unmuted. So I apologize that we've run so over time. We didn't get a chance to introduce you to Renee Applegate, my Polish expert, and show the video that will be included in the closed caption video that I create and will provide to everyone about the history and the tradition of the gingerbread cookies. I hope everyone enjoyed this. Ben, did you have any closing comments? I love seeing everybody's cookies. They're so great. Did anybody taste one? That's the big question though. I'm hungry.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jan. I wanted to just close by saying a huge thank you both to Gryzna, who will hopefully be watching this tomorrow in Poland, also to Jan, who Gryzna's host exchange sister put this together, and a huge thank you to Chef Chauncey as well for leading us through this class this evening. And then finally, I wanted to say thank you to everybody who joined. As you guys could see, we had over 120 people join from all around the world. I know we had lots of our friends in Japan join us. We had a participant from Egypt, from Georgia in Eastern Europe, from Indonesia. So this was truly a global baking class. And so I wanted to say, again, a big thank you to everybody. Of course, all of our participants who are here with us in the US. All of us at States 4-H wish you all a very safe and happy holiday this December. And we hopefully will have more of these in the future. So please keep an eye out on our Facebook page and our Instagram page. And yeah, please also, I'm going to put an email address here in the chat box. Please send us your pictures of your cookies as well. And we'd love to get those pictures. We'll share them on our social media and share them with everybody else in our community who couldn't join us with us today. So again, the email address is in the chat box, exchange@states4h.org. Send us the photos of your cookies. And thanks everyone again for joining. Happy holidays.
Dziękuję.